Look at me for a second. If you've ever felt invisible to women while doing everything right, this message is going to sting, and it's meant to be. As a psychologist, I've watched brilliant men sabotage attraction without realizing it. And today, I'm telling you what most men are never told. Before we go deeper, subscribe to this channel and like this video because what you're about to hear rewires how you show up in every relationship. I'm speaking to you as a woman who understands male psychology and female desire, not from pop culture myths, but from thousands of real conversations. Smart men don't attract women by chasing harder, explaining more, or proving value. They attract women by refusing certain behaviors that quietly kill polarity. The first refusal is emotional overexposure. When you dump your fears, frustrations, and insecurities onto a woman too early, you think you're being honest. What you're actually doing is asking her nervous system to regulate yours. Attraction requires safety, and safety collapses when you lead with chaos instead of grounded presence. The second refusal is approval-seeking disguised as kindness. You compliment excessively, agree reflexively, and mold yourself to what you think she wants. From a psychological perspective, this signals low self-trust. A woman doesn't bond to a man because he's agreeable. She bonds because he's anchored. When you refuse to beg for validation, you create space for genuine curiosity about you. The third refusal is tolerating disrespect in the name of being understanding. Many intelligent men rationalize bad behavior because they fear being alone. Here's the truth. Every time you excuse what violates your values, you teach her how to treat you. Boundaries aren't walls. They're signals of self-worth. Women don't test boundaries to hurt you. They test to see if you have any. The fourth refusal is explaining your value instead of living it. Over-justifying your intentions, success, or morals is a subtle confession of doubt. Confidence is quiet. When you stop auditioning and start choosing, the dynamic shifts. You become the man who is evaluated, not the man begging to be chosen. None of this is about games. It's about psychological integrity. When you refuse what drains your core, attraction becomes a byproduct, not a pursuit. Stay present with this discomfort, because growth begins where ego ends, and the man you're becoming starts listening right now, without apology, without noise, without fear or compromise. You might think you're being mature by showing your feelings, but maturity isn't the same as emotional dumping. The truth is, women don't feel more attracted to a man because he shares his wounds. They feel more attracted to a man who has the strength to carry them without asking for rescue. When you reveal too much too soon, it isn't vulnerability. It's a plea, and a plea turns a woman into a caretaker before she even knows who you are. She'll instinctively feel the weight of your emotions, and she'll either withdraw or try to fix you. Neither outcome creates attraction. The men who truly pull women in aren't the ones who are open. They're the ones who are stable. Stability is a magnetic force because it signals competence, control, and safety. Women don't just want a man who feels, they want a man who can handle what he feels. When you refuse to offload your emotional burden onto her, you become rare. You become a man who makes a woman feel safe without demanding anything in return. Here's where most men lose it. They confuse being emotionally available with being emotionally dependent. Emotional availability means you can express yourself without collapsing. Emotional dependence means you need her to validate your existence. And when you depend, you attract the wrong kind of women, those who thrive on control or those who disappear when it gets real. The healthy, high-value women will sense it immediately and back away. Now listen closely. The moment you refuse to be a project, you begin to attract women who are drawn to strength, not chaos. You start to stand apart from the sea of men who think they're being real by being needy. A smart man knows that emotional honesty is powerful, but emotional reliance is not. A woman wants to be with a man who has his own internal ecosystem, not a man who uses her as a therapist. When you refuse emotional overexposure, you also refuse the fear of being alone. You're not chasing connection because you're desperate for it. You're choosing it. And that shift in energy changes everything. It changes the way you speak, the way you look at her, the way you move through a room. You become a man with boundaries, a man with standards, a man who doesn't ask permission to exist. This is the part most men don't want to hear. Attraction is not created by how much you reveal. It's created by how much you hold. The more you hold, the more she wants to know. The more she wants to know, the more she becomes emotionally invested. And that investment is what turns a casual interaction into something real. If you want women to be drawn to you, stop pouring yourself out like a cup that's already empty. Learn to be full. Learn to be strong. Learn to be the man who doesn't need to be rescued because he's already standing. Now let's talk about the most common mistake men make that they don't even recognize. They confuse being nice with being attractive. I'm going to tell you something that sounds harsh, but it's the truth. Women don't fall for nice. They fall for men who know what they want and don't apologize for it. Nice is a baseline. Nice is expected. Nice is invisible. When you constantly seek approval, you're essentially asking a woman to decide your worth. And that's not how attraction works. Attraction is not a vote. It's a reaction. It's a response to confidence, not consent. The moment you start adjusting your personality to fit what you think she wants, you lose the one thing that makes you unique, your inner compass. Women don't want a man who mirrors them. They want a man who challenges them, excites them, and makes them feel alive. You might be thinking, but I'm just being respectful. Good. Respect is essential, but respect doesn't mean you become a shadow. It doesn't mean you let her define the rules. When you refuse to be a people pleaser, you refuse to be a man who lives for the applause of others. And here's the secret. Women are instinctively drawn to men who live by their own standards. Think about it. Why does a woman feel more attracted to a man who isn't always available? Because it signals that he has a life. He has purpose. He has priorities. He doesn't exist solely to be with her. And that's the difference between a man who is nice and a man who is wanted. When you are too eager to please, you become predictable. Predictability is not sexy. It's safe. And safe is what she'll take when she's bored, not what she'll chase. So how do you refuse approval seeking without becoming arrogant? You do it by being grounded. You do it by speaking with certainty. You do it by knowing your value and refusing to bargain for it. A smart man understands that the goal isn't to be liked by everyone. It's to be respected by the woman who matters. And respect is earned through self-respect. Here's a simple way to test it. When you're with a woman, ask yourself if you're trying to impress her or if you're trying to connect with her. If you're impressing, you're performing. If you're connecting, you're leading. And leadership is magnetic. When you refuse to seek validation, you begin to operate from a place of power, not dominance. Power isn't loud. Power is quiet. It's a man who doesn't need to prove himself. A man who doesn't need to be liked. A man who simply is. And that kind of man, he doesn't chase women. Women chase him. Because deep down, women don't want a man who will bend. They want a man who will stand. Let's cut to the part most men never admit. When you tolerate disrespect, you aren't being kind, you're being weak. And women don't respect weakness. They feel it. They sense it. It's not about being hard or cold. It's about refusing to allow anyone to take what belongs to you. A smart man understands that boundaries aren't punishments. Boundaries are declarations of self-worth. And when you refuse to tolerate disrespect, you begin to stand in your own power. Here's the thing. Women don't want a man who can't handle her emotions. They want a man who can handle his own. When you allow her to speak to you in a way that makes you feel small, you're training her. Every time you let it slide, you're writing a script that says, you can treat me this way. And women are not looking for a man who will be a victim of her mood swings. They're looking for a man who is steady enough to hold the space, even when things get messy. A lot of men confuse being understanding with accepting unacceptable behavior. They think love means tolerating everything. But love is not permission to disrespect. Love is a contract of mutual care. When she crosses a line, a high-value man addresses it calmly and clearly. He doesn't yell. He doesn't beg. He doesn't try to win. He simply states the truth. And that truth is what creates polarity. It's what makes a woman feel the difference between a man who is nice and a man who is real. You might be thinking, but I don't want to lose her. That's exactly why you need boundaries. Because when you're afraid to lose someone, you become weak. Weakness is not attractive. It's desperate, and desperation is a turn-off. The moment you start fearing loss, you stop being the man she wants. You become the man she tolerates. So here's the brutal truth. The men who attract women are not the men who accept everything. They are the men who refuse what doesn't align with their values. They refuse to be treated like an option. They refuse to be talked down to. They refuse to be manipulated emotionally. And they refuse to let anyone disrespect their time, their energy, or their dignity. If you want to be the kind of man women are drawn to, you must stop being a doormat. You must stop being a backup plan. You must stop waiting for permission to exist. Stand up for yourself quietly, firmly, without drama. When you do, women don't just notice, you become unforgettable. Now let's talk about the fourth refusal, the one that silently kills attraction without you even noticing, over-explaining your value. Men do this because they feel unseen and they think if they say it enough, she will believe it. But attraction isn't built by explanation, it's built by demonstration. When you constantly justify your worth, you're actually revealing that you're not convinced of it yourself. You might say, "I'm just being clear." That's not what's happening. You're asking her to approve you. And women deep down don't want to be your judge. They want to be your partner. Partners don't need to be convinced. Partners feel the value. They sense it in the way you hold your posture, the way you speak, the way you move through the world. When you refuse to over-explain, you refuse to make her responsible for your self-esteem. Here's the psychological truth. Women are wired to detect certainty. Certainty is sexy. Uncertainty is not. When you over-explain, you're broadcasting uncertainty. You're saying, "Please don't leave me. Please stay. Please choose me." And that is the opposite of masculine polarity. Masculine polarity is quiet. Masculine polarity is calm. Masculine polarity is a man who knows his worth and doesn't need to argue for it. The men who attract women don't need to talk about their achievements, their morals, or their intentions. They live them. They show up as a man with a life, a mission, a code. They don't ask for validation. They simply stand in their truth. That's why women feel drawn to them. Because a woman doesn't want to date a resume. She wants to date a man who has a spine. So how do you refuse over-explaining? You stop narrating your life like a documentary. You stop trying to convince her that you're good enough. You stop using words as a substitute for presence. When you feel the urge to justify yourself, pause, breathe, then let your actions speak. And if she asks, "Why did you do that?" don't panic. Answer with one sentence. Don't over-clarify. If she wants more, she'll ask. If she doesn't deserve your energy. The moment you refuse to over-explain, you become the man who doesn't need permission to exist. That is the man women want. That is the man they chase. This is not arrogance. It is self-respect. And self-respect is the most attractive trait on earth. Here's the part that most men resist, because it forces you to confront something uncomfortable about yourself. Attraction isn't about what you do for women. It's about what you refuse to do to yourself. Smart men don't become attractive by adding more tactics. They become attractive by subtracting what weakens them. And the hardest thing to subtract is the need to be chosen. From a psychological standpoint, neediness is not an emotion. It's a signal. It tells a woman that your identity depends on her response. And the moment your identity depends on her, the dynamic collapses. You hand her the power, and power imbalance kills desire. Women don't want to be the center of your world. They want to be invited into it. There's a profound difference. When you refuse to need a woman to feel complete, something subtle but powerful happens. Your voice slows down. Your eye contact deepens. Your decisions become cleaner. You stop negotiating your boundaries internally before you even speak. This isn't performance, it's regulation. Women are drawn to regulated men because regulation feels safe. It feels like certainty. It feels like home. Many men think attraction is about intensity. It's not. It's about consistency. A man who is emotionally consistent becomes addictive because a woman never has to guess where she stands. But consistency only comes when you stop abandoning yourself to keep someone else. Every time you suppress your truth to avoid conflict, you fracture trust, not hers, yours. Let me tell you something most dating advice won't. Women aren't scared of strong men. They're scared of men who pretend to be strong until they're challenged. When pressure appears and you collapse into people-pleasing, over-texting, over-explaining, or emotional spirals, the illusion breaks. She doesn't lose attraction because you're human. She loses attraction because you're unstable. Refusing neediness doesn't make you cold. It makes you sovereign. You can care deeply without clinging. You can desire without chasing. You can love without disappearing. That balance is what creates polarity. That's what keeps attraction alive long after the first spark. And here's the irony. The moment you stop trying to hold on to women, they hold on to you. Not because you manipulated them, but because you stopped leaking your power. You stopped asking for reassurance and started offering presence. Presence is rare. Presence is grounding. Presence is intoxicating. A man who knows he'll be okay whether she stays or goes becomes unforgettable because he's not trying to consume her. He's standing beside her. And psychologically, that's the difference between a boy who wants love and a man who inspires it. This is the shift. This is the line most men never cross. And once you cross it, you don't go back. You don't have to. Now I want you to hear this slowly, because this is where everything comes together. Attraction is not something you chase. It's something you allow by refusing what erodes your self-respect. When you stop giving away your emotional center, your approval, your boundaries, and your worth, women don't just notice you, they feel you. And feeling is where desire lives. As a psychologist, I can tell you this with certainty. Women are not attracted to perfection. They are attracted to coherence. A man whose words match his actions. A man whose emotions don't hijack his behavior. A man who doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. That coherence creates trust, and trust is the gateway to intimacy. Smart men don't ask, "How do I get her to like me?" They ask, "Does my life reflect the kind of man I respect?" That question changes everything. Because once you respect yourself, you stop negotiating with loneliness. You stop lowering standards to avoid silence. You stop performing masculinity and start embodying it. Refusing these 4 things isn't about becoming distant or detached. It's about becoming centered. And a centered man doesn't chase attention. He attracts alignment. He doesn't seek validation. He offers clarity. He doesn't tolerate confusion. He chooses peace. Women feel that immediately, even if they can't explain it. And let me be very clear. This isn't about controlling women. It's about controlling yourself. The men who struggle most in relationships are the men who outsource their emotional stability. The men who succeed are the ones who take radical responsibility for their inner world. That responsibility is attractive because it's rare. If you take nothing else from this, remember this. The moment you stop trying to be chosen, you become the man worth choosing. Not because you're perfect, but because you're whole. Wholeness is magnetic. Wholeness doesn't beg. Wholeness doesn't chase. Wholeness stands. And when you stand fully in who you are, without apology, without explanation, without fear, you don't just attract women, you attract better ones. Women who respect you, women who meet you, not manage you, women who choose you because you chose yourself first. That's the truth most men never hear. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it.